If you're a powerlifter and you compete or plan on competing, attempt selection is one of the most important and underrated skills that you can learn. Powerlifting is a sport, and it has winners and losers. And the winners are the people in each weight class who put up the biggest total. The people who win most often are usually the people who make all or almost all of their lifts. That means that you should have a vested interest in going 9 for 9, and I'm going to outline for you exactly how to do that. Let's get into it. Okay, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Des. I'm a strength and conditioning coach. I've been coaching powerlifters full-time for just about 5 years. I've coached at everything from small local meets to the big national level ones, and over those years, attempt selection has really become a strength of mine. As evidence, my team just came off of a meet a couple of weeks ago that I personally prepped 10 lifters for, and of those 90 attempts that we took, we successfully banked 87 of them, which is over 96%, and that's with every single one of those lifters hitting a PR. I want to share with you some of the lessons I've learned in calling attempts successfully, as this is a criminally underappreciated aspect of powerlifting coaching, in my opinion, even to this day. It's actually crazy to me that some coaches don't attend their lifters' meets wherever possible, because it is so easy for all of the awesome and hard work and progress that they've made in training to be derailed super quickly on meet day due to poor attempt selection. But without further ado, here are my top 10 lessons in attempt selection to help you have better meets. The first and probably most important tip is, wherever possible, let somebody else do it. I'm gonna rip this Band-Aid off right now. Attempt selection is stressful, and it requires a lot of experience, skill, and free mental bandwidth to be able to execute this at a high degree successfully. Even if you are super experienced and know your own abilities very, very well, it is still better for you to outsource this task to someone else. And that's exactly what we see the best lifters in the world doing. For one thing, it's just one less thing to be worried about on meet day, which allows you to stay more focused on executing lifts. And number two, it's very hard to remain objective when it comes to your own personal performances in the moment. You also can't see your own lifts in real time as they happen. And it's easy to let those biases creep in, whereas someone else, an objective observer, will be much better suited and positioned to be able to do that for you. So wherever possible, hire a coach to do this for you, or trust a experienced and knowledgeable friend to do this on meet day. That's probably the biggest takeaway from this video. Lesson number 2 is to identify and rank your goals going into the meet. A lot of people just haphazardly sort of go into meet day without any clearly defined expectations or goals. I almost always ask my lifters not only to enumerate, but to rank their desired outcomes for me so that I know what to prioritize. For example, is winning or placing the most important thing in this situation? Is there any kind of qualifying total that you need to account for in what you put up today? Are there any state or national records on the line? These are all things to consider when putting together an attempt plan. Lesson number 3 is about changing your mindset. It is not a max out. It's a sport. This is a hard lesson for most people to learn, so it pays to learn it early. To be the best power lifter you can be, it's not about what you could lift today. It's about what you need to lift today. Like I said up top, this is a sport, and the people who aren't willing to play the game usually lose. Lesson number 4 is open light. A lot of people care way too much about their opener for literally no reason. No one cares what you open with. Think about your single favorite, or what you would consider to be the best powerlifting performance of all time from a single lifter. What did they open with? Yeah, you don't remember. I don't remember either, because it doesn't matter. Openers are only there to get you on the board, to build confidence, and to set you up for what might be there on your second and third attempts. Almost always, this ends up being around 90 to 91% of your 1 rep max, or roughly around an RPE 7, maybe an 8. Another way to think about this is that your opener should be as light as it realistically can be to still accomplish your objectives, mainly setting you up to take normal size jumps up to a possible third attempt. Lesson number 5 is to come in with 2 strategies. Now, people do this in different ways. I always prefer to come into a meet with 2 diverging plans that start from the same opener. I have an aggressive plan, which is what is my lifter capable of on this day if literally everything goes perfectly? And I come in with a conservative plan, which is what if everything goes wrong? What at the end of the day is my lifter still going to be capable of no matter what? And from there, it's about calling your next attempt based off of how the last one moved. Not about what the math says should theoretically be there or what they did in training 3 weeks ago, but how it's actually moving in real time on the day. In other words, don't come in with one set of numbers and be rigid and unresponsive to what ends up being a dynamic and changing situation. Lesson number 6 is it's probably not going to be there on meet day. Now, tapering strategies can vary tremendously, lifters vary tremendously, and some of them can come in on meet day and surpass what they did in training, sometimes by even a substantial margin. But not usually. Usually, you know what you're capable of, even if you don't want to admit it. The meet day environment and atmosphere might give you a slight boost in performance, but it's almost always just that, a slight boost. Basically, your training data and trends will reveal what's possible on meet day. Don't just come in and expect a huge PR to come out of nowhere because it's meet day. That almost never happens. Lesson number 7. If you're ever stuck deciding between 2 numbers, go with the lighter one. This is a relatively simple trick that I learned a long time ago. If you're deliberating, it means you're unsure. I want my lifters to miss 0 attempts, which means only sending them out there if I'm reasonably certain that they're going to successfully complete their next lift. Even on a 3rd attempt, I want to be at least about 65% sure that they're going to make that lift. In practicality, that means if you're ever stuck deciding between 2 numbers of what to jump to next, just automatically go with the lower one, unless you have some, compelling reason like a qualifying total or the win that prompts you to select the higher one. There may be some meager disappointment for a lifter who successfully makes a lift and feels like they had a little bit more in the tank, but no one ever actually gets that upset at a good performance. Missing a lift, though, sucks. Missed lifts are missed opportunities that don't contribute to your total and are usually much more disappointing afterwards. Lesson number 8 is to make smart jumps. Taking huge jumps has become a little bit more popular lately, but it rarely pans out the way people think it will. As a general rule of thumb, jumps of about 4 to 5% between attempts are perfect for most people, and your training should reflect this practice as well. Jumps should also get progressively smaller. To me, this is just good practice. There's nothing wrong with taking a 10 kilo jump to your 2nd attempt and another 10 kilo jump to your 3rd if everything's going well. But most of the time, that jump is going to get smaller a little bit, and you almost never want to take a 10 kilo jump and then a 20 kilo jump afterwards. Your jumps should get progressively smaller as you go, and this should be reflected in your warm-ups as well. Tip number 9 is don't start gaming or jockeying for position until deadlifts. I think people tend to get caught up in the scoreboard way too early. There might be some rare cases where this is advantageous, but 99% of the time, it's just wasted energy. Your goal early on in the meet, no matter what, is to go 6 for 6. You need to make all of your lifts and put up the biggest subtotal you can going into deadlifts, where jockeying for a position is much more doable. And that goes for whether you're a subtotal lifter or a deadlift specialist. You need to make all of those early lifts to put yourself in a position to succeed. And finally, tip number 10 is don't hyperfixate on specific numbers. Go with the flow. Again, this goes back to ranking your goals beforehand, being realistic on meet day and not expecting magic to happen, and calling your attempts based off of how it's actually moving on the day. My best advice is to not go into a meet fixated on hitting a particular total or a particular number on a specific lift, or even worse, a specific dot score. While those are valid, I think they are best reserved for being secondary goals that help guide your decision making sometimes. But your primary goal, almost always going into a meet, should be, I'm going to do the best I can on this day. That means making lifts, adjusting to dynamic changes as they unfold, and doing what needs to be done to place as high as you can on that day. And that's it. I hope you found this helpful. If you did, please consider subscribing as I strive to bring you the best information in powerlifting. If you have any questions about this or suggestions for stuff you'd like to see next, please leave them in the comments for me and I will get back to you. Until then, happy lifting, and I'll see you next time.